Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and life and simplify them. And friends, I want to talk about the inner work stuff. I have been on a kick, let's be real, this whole season, talking about our subconscious, learning about our mindset and all the things. And I'm going again. I'm going to ask and learn and help us simplify, this time, how to harness our inner power. Well, wait a second, what does inner power even mean? That is what our guest is going to tell us all about. And her name is Wendy C. Williams. Not that other Wendy, but this one in particular. She's a trained counselor, international speaker, entrepreneur, spiritual teacher, and a course creator who has lived and worked overseas in her technology career. She's held roles like a director of professional services at tech startups all around the world. Now, as a leadership coach, Wendy provides career guidance, small business consulting, and leadership training, really helping leaders to tap into their source of personal power and to lead in a holistic way that includes their individual masculine, feminine, and divine attributes, no matter their gender preference. Now, I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Wendy C. Williams. Hey, Wendy.
Hey, thank you. That was a lovely introduction.
I'm so pleased that you're here. And if memory serves me correct, Maria Davis had referred you to me. And I think you and I actually swim in the same pond because we were part of a group for Marie Forleo's B School, which has now evolved into a new thing. Now, what Maria told me about you was that you are the woman who knows all things about inner power. So, why don't we start there first? Define inner power. And what are some misconceptions around this?
Yeah, a lot of people are very confused about what inner personal power is because of the models of power that we see in the world and that we've seen really in recorded history. Power has been defined from a masculine perspective. And from my psychological point of view, from a wounded masculine perspective, instead of an empowered masculine perspective. Yeah. That's been the predominant model of power, which translates to, if you're not empowered, control, right, and dominance and force out of fear. And that is epidemic in corporate America, in nations, in the home. It's taught. And you see it all over entertainment, this really toxic, not too friendly, not too fun version of power. And so because it's so prevalent, people believe that's what power is. But in reality, there's lots of different ways to be powerful. And for me personally, I'm on a mission, my soul mission, to teach people how to be holistic and incorporate feminine attributes and masculine attributes with a really strong foundation underlying them that I call spiritual, but really to me it's reaching to the core of who every human is,
right?
And
like
our capacities.
Your human spirit is what you're referring to there, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I feel like we're really at a very fascinating crossroads in our history and in our time that, I'm 43 at the time of this recording. I don't think I've ever lived through anything quite like what we've lived through in the last year and a half, ever, and not just talking about the pandemic, but I feel like things are starting to come to a head and people are waking up to the powers that be in their government or in their cities or otherwise that are just needing a shakeup, right?
Absolutely. I think the 1940s and 50s were the age of having character and being a person of moral standing and standards. And that has been whittled away over the decades to where we are now, where misinformation is so prevalent, people really don't know where to go to hear the actual truth.
Yeah, we're
So
getting our information from, Insta stories on Instagram or TikTok and otherwise, like these bite-sized junk food of noise, right?
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's just a place where you don't know where to turn to get the truth
Yeah. Yeah.
and really who to trust. And that's an erosion of character. It's no
Mm,
longer the standard. And character is based on virtues. What kind of virtues do you want to embody? What kind of person do you want to be?
right.
And so we know what a powerful person feels like. The powerful person is the person that walks into the room, doesn't say anything, and everyone's head turns.
Mm, mm-hmm.
It's the person that walks into the room, again, doesn't say anything, and you sit up a little straight.
Mm, yeah.
You straighten your posture. Why do we react that way? One of the reasons is a person that's really powerful has all of their energy, meaning their attention and their thoughts, and their understanding of what's around them, centered inside of their own body.
Mm,
So that you can tell it's a person who's comfortable in their body and they know who they are. And you don't have to question ever where you stand with a personally powerful person,
mm.
because they're not preoccupied with what everyone else is doing. They have done the inner work to master who they are and how they treat other people. And that's
Mm.
where they come from. And you could feel it physically.
Yeah, and I equate that type of a quote unquote powerful person as somebody who has inner radiance. Like their light shines very bright. And I think going back to what you said at the beginning, it's there's such a huge spectrum of power and powerful people in your realm, whether it is role models in your industry or people that you look up to, or clergy people, pastors, ministers, otherwise. And I think back to your point, power is not about domination and control, which has been for quite some time now, generations, really, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really, since the dawn of humanity, honestly. We've had pockets of balanced power, but
Mm,
they're those pockets of balanced power are not what is taught
yeah.
or talked about commonly. And so when I talk about a holistic way of being personally powerful, um, one of the things that I think needs to be corrected today is to move away from demonizing all things feminine.
Mm,
Um, Currently, for men and women in our Western culture and the culture in the United States, you're criticized if you cry too much or if you're too sensitive,
yeah.
if you care too much. All of those attributes that can be attributed to the feminine style of living and moving through the world.
Right.
And what we're seeing is a rise of people leading from a completely different paradigm that matches the feminine and the masculine together. There,
Mm,
there is not one that's bad. The
right.
masculine way is not bad. The feminine way is not bad. The highly effective person blends the two. So you have people like Simon Sinek and I think he's the former CEO and co-founder of LinkedIn, who are bringing in conscious capitalism
Right.
and bringing in more feminine approaches to being the most effective and powerful leader that you possibly can be. And the attributes that are being brought in to these thought leaders that they're teaching people are feminine attributes.
Mm,
Treat people with kindness.
imagine, shocking thought, right?
Shocking thought. It's kind of like that book, Everything You Need to Learn About Life You Learned in Kindergarten.
Right.
It's an old book. It's basic. But when you come from a wounded masculine perspective of the need to
Right.
control or dominate or force people to do what you want through fear, being kind is revolutionary.
Mm.
And I love Jacinda Ardern, who is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, is what I think is a really current, wonderful example of a leader blending the masculine and the feminine.
Right.
She's nursing her baby while she's presiding over her cabinet.
Right.
And
Right.
she has said, in today's world, leading with compassion is a revolutionary act, which is speaking exactly what I'm speaking to as well. It
Mm.
really is a revolutionary act to honor feminine attributes right alongside all of the really positive male attributes, and to know that that is actually a leadership style that's more effective,
Mm.
helps people be more productive. And when we spend 2/3 of our life at work or commuting back and forth to work, having the workplace a kinder, gentler place that actually appreciates people
Yeah.
actively,
Yep.
regularly, and is enjoyable to be there can completely change countless lives. It'll change how a person will behave at home. It'll change how they feel about themselves. And who knows what a person would accomplish when they have some more positive reinforcement in the place where they spend literally most of their time.
Totally. It ripples out. The teams become stronger. The output of deliverables to their clients become more stronger and of higher quality. And it's a win-win-win in my mind. Absolutely.
And yeah, and I will say this, in order to be personally powerful, you have to regularly exercise the muscle of courage, because
Mm.
it's a lot of the ways in which you behave if you are a holistic leader are contrary to what's common and what's thought of as the right way to do leadership or management. And so you really have to be brave,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Yeah.
have to build emotional resilience, because you will deal with resistance and naysayers and people who are critical. And
Yeah.
so you have to exercise that muscle of courage on a regular basis.
Yeah. And, I think what I hear in all of that is, almost changing the paradigm, and, in essence, deprogramming the patriarchy and things that we have grown up with from little bitty to accept as truths. And so now I feel like there is a coming of age, if you will. It's what people are starting to talk about more than I've ever noticed. And maybe it's just that I'm waking up to it. Maybe people have been talking about it for decades, but truthfully, I feel like we are all starting to get to that place where we're going, that's interesting. That doesn't work anymore. Let's figure out a better way, right?
You are really correct when you say you're hearing people talk about it more.
Yeah.
That's part of the change. People that in the past, and again, I'm speaking specifically to US culture,
Yes.
people in the past that have been disenfranchised and silenced are no longer staying quiet
Right.
about what they are living with. And the world has opened up in the US of the discourse that can happen now,
Yes.
because people are no longer just accepting the negative way of living that they've had to live with, and they're really forcing uncomfortable discussions and helping people to deal with reality as it is, instead of denial and
Mm-hmm.
thinking things are different than the actual truth.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's interesting. I've got a couple of conversations that are going to come up in the podcast in the next couple of weeks and months that really speaks deeply into understanding social change and the patriarchy and how it affects everyone, including white men as well. Like there are so
Absolutely.
many pieces to it that it's not just one side that needs to hear this and really truly ask the hard questions and do the research and listen and start making those changes. It's bit by bit.
Absolutely. I actually feel really bad for men,
Mm.
because we have socialized them to put them in an emotional box. They have like 3 acceptable gears:
Right.
angry, neutral, and sad for a little bit of time, or happy for a little bit of time, and that's it. And we wonder why we're seeing behaviors that we don't like. Well,
Right.
when a person cannot be fully human and accepted as being fully human, what do you expect? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like the best way I can equate it is like if culture and our world as we know it now is a giant etch a sketch, it's just a matter of kind of shaking it up a bit to draw something new and to see it with new eyes. And that's something you and I talked about offline is just the process of acquiring energy eyes. Tell me more about what that means in particular.
Perfect segue. I was literally just thinking, oh, I want to bring this up. In my own entrepreneurial journey, first of all, entrepreneurship has been the most powerful pressure cooker for personal growth I
Yes.
have ever experienced. And I'm a person that studied personal growth literally her entire life, and I'm
Yeah.
in my 50s.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship, my gosh, you yourself, you show up at the table, and boy, there's all kinds of stuff that pops out of the unconscious to deal with in taking your space in the world, moving through the process of developing the courage to be visible,
Yeah.
and knowing what it is that you choose to offer
Yeah.
to people.
It's a
Yeah.
lot.
I mean, there's, oh my gosh, it's just, and it's nonstop. It's a
Yeah.
constant process. And so for me, because I'm a spiritual teacher, when I was confronted with some literally debilitating fear, like 2019 was the worst year of my life. Everything fell apart. I lost my fiance. I lost my nomadic lifestyle. I lost most of my earthly possessions. I was struggling and struggling with um, getting clarity on what I wanted to do in this next iteration of my business, because I'd had a spiritual business in the past, and I knew it needed to evolve and become bigger and something different. And I thought, oh, I don't know. And I struggled and I was confused, and then I was hurt, and then I was devastated, and it was crippling.
Yeah.
It was really bad. So I had to pull all of my tools out of my toolbox to deal with this literally traumatizing level fear. And I started, what helped me through and what got me to a place where I felt powerful again was tapping into the core of who I know that I am. And as a spiritual teacher, my perspective is that we are, as humans, spiritual beings having a physical experience. We're
Yeah.
like invasion of the body snatchers. We're
Yeah.
a creature that is symbiotic with a human animal. But who we are at our core, in my perspective, is a spiritual, energetic being
Yeah.
that is literally immortal and lives by the principles of energy that we know from science. We know that energy cannot be destroyed, it only changes form. And I believe that's true for all humans as well. So at the core and center of us is an immortal, all powerful being that cannot be harmed, cannot die, and therefore has no fear. And that's who we truly are at our core. So when people learn how to have a relationship with that, with your soul,
Yeah.
your core authentic self, you are making friends with your inner guru, the advisor that will always steer you to the path of your greatest fulfillment and your greatest joy, and the perspective that has no fear, that will automatically make you brave, fulfilled, and joyful. And it takes developing some spiritual skills in order to have that relationship. But there is a trick I can teach you right now that people can use to get yes no questions from that authentic core. Do you
Yes,
want me to share
please.
that with you? Okay.
Definitely.
I love doing this with people, so I'm hoping people listen, use it, and see your life transformed. So this is the deal. Your soul really wants the best for you and wants you to be happy and living your highest potential. And so one way to tap into your soul's guidance, your inner guru, is to remember, and I'd like for you to do this, Mary, while we're
Yes.
doing this. And if you want to, close your eyes. If you don't want to, it's okay. But remember a time where you felt really, really happy. Like everything was just working just the way it was supposed to. It was this amazing experience. Your heart was full. You had a smile on your face. You just felt so good. Do you remember a time like that?
Yeah, very clearly. Yeah.
Very clearly. Okay, so where are you feeling these joy feelings in your body?
I feel it in my voice, my throat area. I feel it in my heart space, certainly. And for me, this may sound strange, but where I feel it is in kind of my shoulder blades. It feels like my shoulder blades are up and back rather than contracted and in.
Oh, that's beautiful. There's so much. Is there a temperature
In my body or in that moment?
in your body?
Warm, for sure. Comfortable.
And
Not warm as in hot and sticky and gross, but like warm as in
more like
comfortable
a
and
radiance?
definitely a loving radiance for sure.
Okay, and you said your posture changed. Your shoulders wanted to go back. So what's the movement of that feeling?
It feels like release, and it feels, I don't know, trying to find the right words to describe it, but it just feels like being at home.
At home. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. By the way, just as a side note, the posture change and that kind of expansiveness in your heart area is you literally connecting with the energetic, I'm going to call it a cord,
Yeah.
with your soul.
Yeah.
It's attached in the same area where you felt straightened up. So you're actually energetically describing aligning with your soul on an energetic level. And I love that. So when you are feeling wonderful, you have an inner warmth that radiates from your heart center and your throat, and you change your posture and you feel slightly more expansive and you feel like you've come home,
Yeah.
right? That is your soul's yes. So that experience, that physical body experience, whenever you are feeling that, you know you are in alignment with the intention of your soul, the part of you that's absolutely fearless and knows what's going to make you the most fulfilled and happy. So you can now ask yourself yes or no questions. Forget your mind. Just tune into your body. Do you get a strong soul yes? Or do you feel something else that maybe is constricted or tight or cool or the opposite of that soul yes? So I want you to right now, do you have a question about something in your life?
I have been contemplating taking a bit of extended time off to, slow down and truly listen to my body and, do some exploration, if you will. So I guess that's a question in my mind of like, should I do it? Should I do it now? Should I do it later? Yeah.
Okay, so the yes or no question is, should I take this time off now? Let's say in the next month.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like for you to close your eyes and just ask the question to yourself, should I take this time off, this break in the next month? And then forget your mind and just tune into your physical body.
Yep, my physical body says, "Hell yeah! What are you? Why are you even asking this question?" Duh.
So your body responds with the sensations.
Yeah.
The soul, yes, it gets rid of all of the excuses and rationality and all that stuff in the mind, and you get something that you can depend on from your most powerful self,
Yeah. Yeah.
your inner guidance. There's your PS for life. Now you can ask any yes, no question and get the right answer that bypasses all the excuses.
I love that, Wendy. And truly, I hope that anyone that's listening to us right now, take a moment to press pause in your podcast player. Like right now, we'll be there when you come back and do this exercise. Maybe even listen back a minute and listen to Wendy's words as a balm straight to you to see what comes up. Because I feel like this is a conduit in order to tap into that inner power, that deep inner knowing inside of us that we just don't listen to very often, do we?
One of the attributes of a truly authentically powerful person is that they trust themselves.
Right.
And it's really hard to trust yourself when you only use your mind, which has a lot of programming from the outside. And especially for women, we're programmed to question ourselves. And the most competent of us have imposter syndrome and think that we're not enough. Not enough is a disease. So to go through this exercise and be able to start relying on yourself and know that you can rely on yourself builds that inner trust, and naturally your personal power starts to build alongside that.
So part of this work then of like understanding and asking that soul's yes, the yes or no questions, is part of how to acquire those energy eyes. Is that it, or is there other things also that are at play here as well?
There are a ton of other things. I can tell you that in my early 20s, I began to um, research metaphysical things and learn about the chakras and the aura and using energy. And then I apprenticed with a teacher for about a decade, and then I started teaching myself. And I've taught for, I don't know, about 15 years. I was teaching pretty regularly energy work. And I will say, understanding our spiritual or energetic anatomy and understanding how to work with it will revolutionize all of your relationships and how you see the world. And it will teach you how, that you are way more powerful than you ever realized. So an example you and I talked about when we were preparing for this interview was when I learned how to set an intention in my energy. And I experimented with it sitting in an office building at work because I was taking classes. And I thought, well, let me just see how this technique works. And I did it. And I instantly got a reaction from people directly speaking to the intention that I had set in my own energy. And then students that I've taught since then have had very similar experiences. When you start working with your own energy, you can have an impact. Again, it's this power that radiates out of you that doesn't require explanation or defense or talking, really. And you can change the experiences that happen in the real world with people by managing your own energy.
So I want to break that down in a very practical way because I'm so fascinated by this idea. So when you say setting your intention of your energy, is that like your aura as well? Like how you want to show up in a space or at a presentation, let's say, or otherwise?
Absolutely. So let me just give you some example of what you can do when you learn to work with your energy anatomy. If a person is feeling sick, like a cold coming on, you can literally fluff your aura and it will prevent you from getting really, really, really sick. So it's a thing that you do in your mind. I also use my hands. I teach people how to become sensitive physically to the energy world around them, because you can use your hands then to work with energy. Another example is what I was telling you before. I was being vague, so I'll be specific. I literally hung a sign of course, an imaginary sign.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from an author by the name of Sanaya Roman that imagination is the organ of intuition. And your mind sets intentions. And when you set an intention, it actually sets reality into motion. And so, again, that's another level of understanding how powerful we are. So I set an intention by imagining a sign being hung on my aura.
Hmm.
And the sign I imagined that I hung on my aura was, I am beautiful. And I did it sitting at my desk. I got up, I was walking down the hall, and a person that I used to pass in the hall that would never say anything to me stops me and says, I have to tell you, you look so beautiful today,
Wow.
which blew my mind that
Right.
I could literally imagine a word and people around me would pick up the perception. Now,
Mm.
imagine being able to do this when you go into an interview
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
and you hang a sign. I am the best candidate for the position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or imagine if you're about to take the stage and speak at a conference or do a big sales presentation with a client or, walking into a room again. So many people are feeling so nervous about getting in real life at a networking meeting or an event. I could see a lot of
Yes.
truth in just trying this and see what comes of it.
Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
spiritual tools to make yourself grounded and
Yeah.
calm when you're feeling nervous.
Mm.
And again, the energy is very real.
Yeah.
Even though you're using your imagination to do the work, the effects are physical.
Mm.
When you learn how to ground your energy and pull your energy in, your attention in from worrying about what your kids were doing or the argument you had with your spouse
Right.
or the issue you have with a coworker, and you literally just say, I'm pulling all of my attention and energy into my physical body now.
Yeah.
You become more present. You have that charisma and that magnetism because you're no longer beside yourself.
Right. Right.
You're fully present. And
Right.
you most people are scattered. So when you pull in your energy into your physical body, you instantly more powerful in the room because most people are not fully present.
I mean, that relates back to what you were saying in the beginning, of that alignment there. And I can see my logical brain is trying to break it down and make sense of it. So I apologize for this, but I could see how my logical brain goes, okay, if you have an intention to your aura and your energies, and you put that imaginary sign out and you say, I am confident, I am calm, I am radiant, let's say, and that is also a signal to your brain to go, this is an identity thing that I believe is true. So when I step into that truth, my shoulders do roll back. My posture is a different way. I'm making eye contact with courage rather than, shrinking or avoiding or otherwise, right?
Absolutely. Literally can hang signs that face outward or hang a sign that faces inward for the
Yeah.
same influential effect.
Right. So fascinating
Yeah,
to me. Yeah. So, I really encourage you, if you guys are listening, try that. Try it now. Like, why not? See what happens for the next couple of hours if you move through the world in a different energetic way, just with that simple little trick there. And I imagine also in relation to that, it's when you are in deep alignment with your inner power and your inner knowing, intuition, whatever you want to call it, your soul. It resonates much more easily with repetition, right? When you do it over and over and over again, the first couple of times might be super awkward and clunky and go like, I don't know if I really believe this, but you just do it. And then you go, oh, actually it's sending a cue back to your soul as well that like you're listening, you're trusting
yeah,
me, all the things, right?
Absolutely. I'm a right and left brained person. And
Yeah.
for me, the proof is in the pudding. If
Mm-hmm.
I try something, I want to see a result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to just be in fantasy land. I want to actually see that something works.
Mm.
And this stuff actually works.
Mm.
People have real, tangible results doing this work. Another example I shared with you is a student I had that set the intention of having peace whenever she was in the office and more quiet because the sales guys were really loud. And
Mm.
every time she set that intention, none of the sales guys came into the office.
Hmm.
So it was more peaceful.
Yeah.
I mean, so the impact is real world and very practical.
Mm. I love
It's
it.
not just mystical, although it is mystical what you're doing. But again, the spiritual falls into the realm of the feminine. And throughout human history, feminine powers have been demonized, which
Right.
is burned and all this kind of stuff. Well, guess what, ladies? We're naturally in tuned to this mystical, magical way of being, and it
Right.
is part of your heritage of power of being a woman.
Yeah.
So don't be ashamed of our intuition and everything that we can do with it. Use it to harness your birthright, your spiritual power.
Right. And I think, as a woman myself, I know that I can walk into a room and read the energy fairly quickly, and notice that in other people. And I don't know if that's just because I'm a female or I have empathic tendencies. But I think that there is such an asset to be able to read other people's energies and see where they're at, and be a mirror at times when needed.
Absolutely. It can also be detrimental
Yeah.
if you're not feeling particularly powerful or if you
Yeah.
feel overwhelmed by perceiving so much of what other
Mm.
people are feeling. So, this wrapping it in with the practice of becoming as powerful personally as you can,
Yeah.
building emotional resilience, having appropriate boundaries,
Right.
understanding boundaries require consequences. Oh, scary
Mm.
stuff. Building the muscle of courage,
Yeah.
knowing who you are, knowing what you are willing to stand for.
Yeah, that's all, everything. And knowing who you are not, I think, as well. Because I think a tendency for a lot of us is to become codependent or a fixer or a people pleaser or, oh, their energy is not so great, so let me fix them or fix the situation. And I don't think that's what the world needs anymore. We're at a paradigm shift.
Absolutely not. One of my favorite phrases that I learned in my training was
Mm.
holding people able.
Mm-hmm.
Have moving through the world with an attitude of, yes, you are capable. I don't need to fix anything. If a person comes to you for advice, that's one thing, but no, we don't have to fix people. They're
Right.
capable of living life exactly as they choose.
Mm. So I want to shift gears here because I think this is the perfect place to talk about it is ego versus our soul. Like what is the difference between the two and how do we communicate between the two as well? Like having a certain level of ego is healthy, right? You hear the question
Absolutely.
in my voice. It's right. It's okay, right?
Yeah, I think, in the past, the ego has been again demonized as
Yeah.
being something bad. But the truth is, you cannot be a powerful person unless you have a healthy ego.
Right.
From my understanding, I consider, and this is a bit out there, but I'm going to tell you anyway,
Go for it.
I consider, first of all, science has validated that we have multiple levels of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple levels of consciousness. They're documented, they're measured. It's a scientific fact. And one level of our consciousness, I believe, is the consciousness that our human animal body has. So your heart beats on its own. The heart communicates with the stomach. It's not just the brain. There's actually a non-local mind that's bigger than the brain. But all of your bodily functions happen without conscious thought.
Yeah.
That means there's a level of consciousness that is running the system, your biological system. That level of consciousness is the source of our fears because it's the only part of us that can be harmed and die. It has to be fearful to survive.
Yeah.
It's a necessity. And we are this very powerful, immortal being that has merged symbiotically with this animal body.
Yeah.
We even talk about our bodies as if it's a thing we possess. We say our body. We don't say, I'm body. We say, my body. It's a
Yeah.
thing you possess.
Right.
Even in our language, we understand the difference. So when you understand that your body has its own level of consciousness and that the ego comes from that level of consciousness, you understand why the ego behaves the way it does. Of course, your physical body is attuned to scarcity and not having things. Of course, it's worried about the safety it has in relation to other animal beings and the hierarchy and whether it can survive. It makes obvious sense. And you can use your conscious awareness, your waking awareness, to begin to have a relationship with that aspect of yourself. I treat the consciousness of my body as a toddler that I love. So when I have a major fear that's getting in my way of doing something that I want, I literally start dialoguing with the fear. I first give it permission to come up to the surface of my mental awareness. It no longer has to hide in my subconscious or my body somewhere where it's causing physical damage. We do store our emotions that we haven't been able to process in our physical body.
Yes.
And it has a very detrimental effect if we don't get it out.
Yeah.
So knowing that you have a soul and that the soul's consciousness lacks any and all fear, you can start loving all aspects of yourself and learning to actually love your fear, which sounds really radical and weird to people. But if you treat your fear as a toddler that you love and start telling it's okay that you're here, it's safe for you to come to my awareness. You can tell me what's going on. It's okay for you to come up to the light of day. I'm not resisting you anymore. I'm not denying you anymore. I'm embracing you and I love you. What I found when I started dialoguing internally that way with my traumatizing fears, it told me what it was doing. It's always protecting something. And the more that I dialogued, every time it revealed a part of my personality that it was protecting, standing in front of. And then I saw this incredible, usually a childlike aspect that the fear is protecting. And then it would reveal it when it realized it no longer had to hide it to be safe. And then I became more whole because I had access to more of my authentic self, the part of me that I hid away before all of the world's programming layered on top of it.
Yeah. You know,
So it's a more pure version of me.
it gives me chills when hearing you speak about this, because I feel like my deep inner child or fear is like sitting up, and her ears have just perked up and goes, wait, Mary, listen to what Wendy's saying right here. That's me. That's it. Right? Like I hear her saying that in my heart and I go, oh, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. When we try to bottle our fears or shut them down or push them down or go, no, 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 I'm just going to be, I'm powering through, I'm hustling and grinding and all the nonsense that we all have been fed for so many years. You're absolutely right. When I do acknowledge my fear, when I do talk to her in a loving, kind, motherly way, not in a patronizing, pat him on the head kind of way, but in a true mothering and loving way, it changes the dynamic, doesn't it? Changes everything.
It changes everything. You feel release, you feel lighter, you have access to more joy, and you become, in the words of Brene Brown, a more wholehearted person.
Right.
Which is a person that is juicy to be around, right? You actually become more intriguing and more attractive to people the more authentic you are. And that is the surest path to greater authenticity, is to allow your fears to come up and naturally dissipate because you're no longer hiding and fighting them.
And that makes me think of a conversation that I had just last week with Serena Hicks. She was speaking about how to make big, happy money. And she's also a visibility coach. She helps people really step up and into their true power and own being visible. And I think I can only speak to my own story. The moments where I felt not so confident, not so great, I kind of shrink down and sort of went behind the scenes, and you contract. I dare say in certain times of your life, if you're going through something hard or otherwise, you can't always be on. You can't always be visible 24/7. Sometimes you got to do the inner work and just do it behind closed doors. But equally, I think there is an ebb and flow to this, right? That visibility, that expansion work is what your true heart desires, your true soul desires ultimately, right?
Absolutely. We as human beings love growing and expanding. If we are creators.
Yeah.
And if you have allowed yourself to hold on to fears, it shuts down your ability to grow. That actually creates a lot of inner suffering and tension in your life, and life becomes muted. But not only does life become muted, people don't get to know who you are. So then you deprive yourself of really powerful connections. And who doesn't want powerful connections with people? So the more authentic you can be, the greater your connection with others, and people get to connect with you on a real level, not a surface fake social mask level.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's cyclical. Like you're not always on. You have ebbs and flows. When you learn to truly love yourself, you respect when you need to take a step back and do some self-care, or hibernate, or take some naps, or, take some space to emote by yourself, just to really cry it out, do the ugly cry with the snot and everything rolling, and the camera is not on. We all need to do it, and that's fine. That's the cycle of life. There's always ebbs and flows. But when you truly love yourself and you respect yourself and you know yourself in a deeper way than you ever have before, you can honor what you need at any given time.
So powerful, so strong. And I really feel it, not only in my heart center, but in my deep inner knowing, my deep inner power just goes, yes, what she's saying is yes. So if you're curious about what Wendy is doing out in the world and through her work and coaching, meditations, and more, I highly recommend checking out her website, wendywilliams.me. And all the links are in the show notes over at thesimplifierspodcast.com, so you can find her out in the world, her social media channels, and all of that. Because I think that this is, again, such a crossroads. We are at a place where the world is reopening, and we as humans are shaking up the Etch-a-Sketch and going, what will the next season of our lives look like? What will my identity be in that? How will I choose to work, or who I work for, or all the things? And then I think on a deeper level, how am I interacting with the world, climate change, and within my city and social change, and really, truly to change culture as we know it in a big, big way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes to all of that.
Yes.
A hard yes. So, Wendy, I have a few questions I like to ask everybody just as we wrap up here. So, I want to ask you as well. First off, what is one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system right now?
Well, right now I'm rereading and really listening to Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, because I'm stepping up to another level of power in myself. I'm an ever evolving peeling of the onion to
Yes.
get to my core self. And courage is the name of the game for me right now. And Brene is, she's in the pocket. I love that girl.
She's so powerful. Really, truly. I think she is divinely sent down for us right in this generation where we need her the most. Yes.
Absolutely.
Such a great book.
Absolutely.
We'll link that up in the show notes if people want to check that out, the simplifierspodcast.com. So tell us, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, that you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Well, I immediately think of my friend Anik Ina, and she used to call herself the book doula. I don't think she's doing that anymore, but she's really genius when it comes to helping people identify exactly what they want to write about, if they've decided they wanted to be an author, how to go through the process of completing a book, all the stages, and then getting it published on Amazon. She's brilliant at it. And the way she works with people is really special. She's asked me questions in my process of clarification that I'd never heard anywhere else. And it's kind of magical working with her. And she's a very delightful, very bright soul. She's a bright light. Love her.
Yeah, I know her as well. She is a bright light. She is definitely somebody we want to have on the podcast. So we'll link her up in the show notes for people if you guys want to check out her work in the world as well. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
To be honest, I'm really grateful for my privilege of living in the United States with all of the issues. I am one of the most privileged people on the planet because I live in the U.S. I have a roof over my head. I have the internet. I have multiple computers. I have a car. And I'm safe. I have food on my table. That is enormous wealth in the context of the world population. And I'm very much aware of that, and I'm very grateful for it. And I appreciate every little bit of this excessively comfortable life that I have in the U.S.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how we forget these things that are so base level to us, but are so critically important to, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Safety and security is at the base of the pyramid, and we just take it for granted so many times. Oh, yeah, we have running water and Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
And a never-ending supply of snacks, it seems like. So ultimately, we're doing all right, I think, aren't we?
We're doing wonderfully, and so much better than most of the people living on the planet. Yeah, it's really good. If you have a refrigerator and a bed, you're doing better than 75% of the human population.
It's insane.
That's sobering.
Yeah, it really is. So again, you can find Wendy online through our show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com, link to her website, her social media, all of the things that she's doing out in the world, and get connected with her there. So Wendy, my final question for you is this. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and she's thinking, you know what? Maybe there is something to this. I have not felt very powerful in the last few months, nay, the last years or so. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I would say this: your existence, the fact that you're alive, the chance of that is more than 1 in 400 trillion. And therefore, every life is a miracle. It is a miracle that any human life that has ever existed happened at all. And because it's a miracle, your life has meaning, and you have meaning. And your value is because you are alive to do the thing that brings your heart its most joy. Your value is not the car you drive, the house you live in, the job you have, or your mate or whoever you married, or even whether you have kids. It has nothing to do with any of those things. Despite what you see on TV, it has nothing to do with any of those things. Your value is inherent because you are alive, and your value is never up for debate, even in your own head, and it is never to be questioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Wendy. It's such a pleasure.
Ah, I loved it. This is a great conversation. It's fun.